Hi everyone, thanks again for joining us for today's webinar, Shore Up Your Marketo Skills, Getting the Most Out of Your Day-to-Day Tasks. Joining us today is Eric Nilson. Eric is a Marketo certified expert. He's worked with dozens of Marketo customers to optimize their Marketo programs. Eric provides unmatched marketing automation expertise with hands-on instruction and actionable best practices to transform your marketing organization into a demand generation machine. Eric works with Shomi Leads, a marketing automation consulting company. As a technology services provider, we craft powerful marketing automation solutions and ensure long-term success for our clients. We do this by customizing and deploying the Marketo platform, generating and nurturing quality leads, ensuring long-term success in lead qualification efforts, and crafting powerful marketing automations to help grow revenue. Our selection of programs and services address a wide range of problems clients experience so we can tailor solutions to their unique needs. Whether it's becoming an extension of your marketing team, creating custom email templates, performing health check audits, and assisting with training or integration needs, we help optimize your Marketo instance. Now, before we get started, we want to encourage everyone to submit questions into the questions box during the webinar. We'll answer these questions during the Q&A portion at the end of the webinar. With that, let's go ahead and get started. Eric, I'll go ahead and pass it over to you.
Thanks, Courtney. Hi, everyone. My name is Eric Nilson, and I'm happy to be presenting this series of webinars that we'll be having over the next month or so. Today, we are going to cover email programs. In the future, next week at the same time, we're going to talk on data management. After the holiday, we will get into form creation and tips, email creation and tips, and how to create engagement programs. So I hope to see you at all of these, but I'm glad that you have attended this one, and I hope that you find this informative. So first off, let's talk about the various different program types that we have in Marketo. We have the default program. I think most everyone is used to that, the little brown briefcase that we all know and love. And it's basically the container for campaigns and assets and various other things to allow us to track membership and various other things that kind of keep us contained within one place. Engagement programs, or also known as nurture programs, are the type of programs that allow us to nurture our leads through a drip of emails in a series with transitions and various different pieces that allow us to nurture our leads and go through various emails to do so. Event programs allow us to basically track events such as this one, for example, and we are able to send out invites, track progress on those invites, send out reminders, track attendees and no-shows and all of that sort of thing. And then we get to email programs, which is the topic of today's webinar. So let's talk first about, before we get into creating, let's first talk about what an email program is. And the best way to think of an email program is basically an alternative word that even Marketo uses for it, which is an email blast. It is at its very core a way for you to send an email to a group of people very easily and cleanly. It is not for doing score changing or anything like that you would do in a normal campaign flow. Anything that you would do beyond send email is not what this is for. This is to send an email. And also, as we'll get to in a little bit, send a very effective A/B test. Which is another huge benefit of it. We'll get to that. But first, let's just cover the basics here of how we actually create an email program for those of you that potentially have never used one. And it's pretty straightforward to create one. First thing I want to go through is kind of what we're going to cover. So we're going to look at the list or audience of our program, the who of the situation here. So who are we going to send it to? The email itself, what are we going to send? And the schedule, when are we going to send it? Then we get to some of the other features that we have within there. I mentioned A/B testing. There's also a feature called Head Start and the dashboards that we have in email programs. So let's start off with the basics, like I said. How do we create an email program? Well, very simply, just as you would have created a normal default program, you go to New Program in your menu system, and it takes you to the same screen you usually see when you create a default program. Except in this case, you will choose email program and hit create. It's basically very straightforward, just as if you were creating a normal program. What do you see? Well, here's what it'll look like once you first create it. You'll notice that there are 4 boxes. There aren't a smart list tab, a flow tab, a schedule tab, all those kind of things like you have in a campaign. Everything's right in front of you. Everything you're going to need to know is right in front of you and very easy to get to. The audience tab is basically going to show you, who's going to get it. The email tab covers the what, right? You're going to choose your email. The schedule tab is going to get you your information in terms of when am I going to send this. And you'll notice the Head Start checkbox there that is in that third box, and we'll cover that. And then the approval. So really, it's a 4-step process, which keeps it very simple and very straightforward. I will speak, from my own perspective. At Shomi Leads, we find that a lot of people find email programs to be a lot simpler, yet also a little more robust than sending an email from a campaign. Again, as long as all you're doing is sending an email. So let's start with the audience. Once you've created an email program, you've got to tell it who to send the email to. So there's 2 ways you can do this. First, as we illustrate here, is you can hit Edit Smart List. There is a Smart List within an email program, and you can put filters in there just as you would put filters in a campaign Smart List. Anything you want, anything that there's a filter available for, you can do. You find the filters, you drag them over, just as you would with any Smart List. So it's pretty straightforward there. You'll notice also on the right-hand side of that box where it says Import List. So this is what I consider to be a nice feature. It allows you from here to import a list that you're going to use specifically for this send. So, what we see, at Shomi Leads sometimes is you get a list of leads that you want to send an email to. You've either acquired this from another part of the company, you've purchased a pre-qualified set of leads, something like that, and you import that directly into the email program, and you at that point have your audience set and ready to go, and you can now send an email to that audience. You don't have to worry about doing imports separately, keeping it in a certain place, and keeping or having to keep doing all this stuff step by step. It's right there in that tab or in that square. So when you're done, you just basically go back to the program and you'll see how many people will qualify. This is very similar to what you see in the schedule tab of a campaign. It will show you how many leads qualify and how many are blocked. And just like with a campaign, blocked leads are generally those that have unsubscribed. Sometimes it's email invalid, email suspended. It could be any of those reasons, similar to what you have with a campaign. In this case, though, in most cases, you're going to see unsubscribed showing up there. Once you have created your email program and you've defined your audience, you now want to move over to the second square, or I should say rectangle, to decide what email you are sending. You can pick one that already exists, and that's probably the most common way of doing it, is you just drop down the email drop-down box. You select one of your emails just as you would in a send email flow step, and then you basically select that and you're done. Another way to do it, though, is you can click on New Email. So similar to what we had experienced here with the import list being directly available within the block, now you have New Email available within this block. You can hit that. It brings up on the right-hand side there, you'll see the New Email dialog box that you normally see, and allows you to select the program, the name, the template, and it'll immediately take you to the editor. So if you don't have everything already, you can do it right from here and kind of play as you go and make assets as you go. So it's a nice feature for both of these boxes to be able to create something rather than have to have it already existing. Either way works, and honestly, most people go with what already exists because that's what they're used to. But if not, it's a nice way to kind of go about your business if you have to. So let's look at schedule. So for a schedule, it's very simple, just like the schedule tab that you would see in a Marketo campaign. With that created, you've got your audience defined, you've got the email. Now you've got to tell it basically when to send the email. So you select your email program. Under the schedule tile, you select the date and you select the time, and you have now scheduled your email, and you'll move over to the approval box on the right hand side and say approve, and you're done with a very simple email program. That is at its most basic level, and frankly, a number of people will just do this and be perfectly happy doing it in that fashion. But where email programs start to differentiate themselves from an email campaign is what we're going to cover next. So what we've seen here is not that different from an email campaign. There's some nice benefits. It's a little cleaner to look at. It's simpler, I think. And at Shomi Leads, we've seen a lot of customers, give us that feedback that it's a lot simpler to use than a campaign. But what additional value does it really add? Is it going to do something that's just going to blow my mind and make it like I want to do these every time I send an email blast out? So that's where we get to the next pieces, specifically A/B testing. So A/B testing is something that Marketo does have available in their Champion Challenger testing, but this is a much more robust way of doing true A/B testing. It's really the preferred method, to be honest, of doing a true A/B test. Nice thing is you can do subject line testing, whole email testing, from address testing, and date time testing. These are all really nice ways to do your testing, and these are all ways that a lot of marketers like to do their testing. Subject line test, I think, is probably the most common one that we've seen here at Shomi Leads, but whole email and from address are certainly big ones as well, and date time. Sometimes you want to see when it's doing its best work and when I should be sending my emails. So how do you add an A/B test? Let's cover the mechanics of it first. Well, the first thing you're going to do is select your email program, and under the email, in the email tile that we looked at earlier, on the right-hand side at the bottom, there's Add A/B Test. You'll get a test editor window open. So this is where you're going to select the test type. The email is hard-coded in there because you've already selected the email. And in fact, you need to have an email selected before you can choose even to go into an A/B test. So if you haven't selected your email, do that first before you try to put an A/B test on it. Subject line is the example we've got here. So for example, we've got my subject line and my second subject line. And what will happen is that we will test both of those, see what the winner is, and then send out the winner. And we'll go into more detail on that, but that's the very basic piece of it. What you'll see is that you can set a test sample size. So this is something that is very powerful to me, is that you can actually, at a very granular level, even like this one here showing 14 to 86%, right? You can pick any kind of percentage you want to send your sample to. Basically, it's a slider, and you just move it left and right and pick your sample size. So if you want a 20% sample, what it'll do is take 20% of your population from your smart list, and it will send the 2 subject lines out to that sample. And it will evaluate based on that before it sends to the winner. Now, how is it going to send to the winner? Well, you're going to give it instructions. It needs to know, how do I define a winner? What am I looking for? And so you'll see those first four that are boxed there: opens, clicks, click to open percentage, and engagement score. These are the most common ones. We'll get to custom conversion in a second, but these are the most common winner criteria that we see. What happens basically is what you'd expect. We send out, say we did the 20% test, for example, and 10% got the first subject and 10% got the second subject. We're now going to look at how many people opened it over a period of time, and that period of time will be defined later on. So let's say that period of time is an hour. So we're going to send the two emails out. We're going to wait an hour, and we're going to evaluate how many opens each email got. And then once we've done that, each email is going to be evaluated, look at which one has the most opens, and whichever one has the most opens becomes the winner. Same thing with clicks, click to open percentage, and engagement score. It's very simple, that basically all you're going to do is look at the value that is in each category and pick the winner. And this can be automatic. We'll get to that in a little bit. Custom conversions, though, I want to get into this. It's not heavily used, but it can be quite powerful if it matches your needs. And as we put in here, if you want to get fancy, you can go custom. So what you do is you just click custom and you hit edit, and you're going to see something that looks very familiar. You are going to see a bunch of triggers. So for example, if you consider a success for a specific email to be filling out a form, and so I want to know how many people filled out the form on email 1 and how many people filled out the form on email 2. And that's how I want my winner set up. It's very simple to do. You just pull that trigger over into the smart list that's attached to the choice. And at that point, that will be your criteria. You're going to go in there and you're going to select which form that you want it to be, and you're going to hit close. Again, very straightforward type of things that you do with an email program. And I want to go back for a second. That is, to me, one of the best values of the email program is you can do things that are more complicated, but it's not complicated to do. And I know that sounds a little odd, but it's really easy to do some complicated things, A/B testing being one of them. So then you can choose to have the winner be automatic or manual. In most cases, I've found that our customers want to do automatic, keep themselves out of it, and just kind of set it and forget it. And that is a great way to do it. And it's the default option for a reason, because most people want to do it that way. Now, the nice thing as well with A/B testing is, instead of having to just worry about the schedule of when I want my email to go out, you're going to deal with when does the test go out and how long do I want to wait before I send the winner. So in this case, we see here we're going to send the test on June 26th, and we pick that at 3:37. So we're going to send that first 20% on the 26th at 3:37. Now we can do the same thing for the winner. We can give it an hour, we can give it a day, we can give it a week, we can give it whatever we want. Generally speaking, what we see at Shomi Leads here is that at most you're going to select a day, 24 hours to do that. So I think that's where you're going to see most of it. Sometimes it's 3 or 4 hours. It just depends on how timely the email is, and what you want to do there. But you select that duration, and you select when you want to send the winner. You can also send an email to anyone to let them know what happened. So you've set this off, you've done set it and forget it, everything's ready to go, you've hit approve, and then you want to send a notification to yourself saying, hey, by the way, which one won? This will do that. And so you can send that to anyone. They don't have to be a Marketo user. For example, if your CMO wants to know, but they're not a Marketo user, which is often the case, you can send it to them. It's free flowing there in terms of who you want to send it to. So again, A/B testing, a great feature of email programs. something that is very difficult to do in campaigns and not nearly as clean as if you use it in an email program. So really big feature there, and something that everyone should know about if they didn't already. And definitely you want to make sure that you give that a shot and see if it meets your needs within your specific email sent. So let's talk a little bit about another feature. This is a recent ad by Marketo called Head Start. So one of the downfalls of an email program, and honestly, it's also a downfall of a campaign, is the smart list has to evaluate first. Marketo has to say, okay, here's a smart list, and build the population of people behind the scenes that meet the criteria of that smart list. If you have a simple smart list or you have a small number of leads in your system, well, you're not going to have much problem there. It's going to take a few seconds to do that. But let's say one of these two happens, right? One, you've got a huge database, millions of leads in your database, or you've created a very complex smart list that has nested smart lists below it. You have numerous criteria. You have numerous ands and ors in there, various different logical modifiers, everything you could dream of in there. That causes smart lists to take a little while to evaluate. We have seen at Shomi Leads situations where the smart list alone takes 3 to 4 hours to evaluate. So imagine you've set off your email program or your campaign to send at 10 a.m. and you notice that no emails are being sent for a really long time, and then the next thing you know, at 2 o'clock, all of a sudden the emails are going out. And the first thing you think of is, well, I'm going to call support and find out why that happened. Well, I can tell you before you do that the reason is because usually your smart list is too complex, or your data size is affecting what your smart list is doing. So this happened a lot with email programs. To do it on a campaign was a little more tricky, and we don't have this capability within a campaign. So you're still going to have this problem if you're using a very complicated smart list or a large data set in a campaign. Email programs, it got real simple. They added a checkbox to the schedule tab called Head Start. So what happens? Well, what happens is that 12 hours before your send, so for example, you've set off your send to go out at noon. At midnight before that, Marketo is going to start processing your smart list. It's going to act as if it's ready to send and process your smart list and build that population and then stop. Whereas normally it would then go on and send, it's going to stop, pause itself, and wait until noon. At noon, your population is built, it's ready to go. So the next thing to do is send the email. And literally right away with that population at noon, your email is going to go out. We've seen a number of people here and a number of organizations that are really frustrated by how long it takes for an email to go out, especially if they have large data sets. This really helps with that. Now, there are a couple caveats to this that I need to bring up. One is that you must schedule 12 hours ahead of time. So if you want it to go out at noon today and it's only 10 a.m., you cannot do Head Start. You have to do it 12 hours before your send, because that 12 hours is hard-coded into Marketo, and it will only work 12 hours ahead of time. You can do it 24 hours, 3 days, that's fine, but you can't be less than 12 hours. The other caveat, and this one is a little bigger, because it's pre-populating that list 12 hours ahead of time. Well, what happens, for example, in our example here where we said we're going to send at noon and it's going to start compiling at midnight. Well, what happens at 7 a.m. when I, as one of the leads you're going to send the email to, decides to unsubscribe? Well, that becomes a bit of a problem, right? Because we have already pre-compiled our list of eligible leads. And the reality of it is that if somebody unsubscribes within that 12-hour period, they will still get the email. Now, that's a cost-benefit type thing that you're going to want to weigh. It's very rare that it happens, but one recommendation that we have, and Marketo makes this recommendation as well, if you're going to be using email programs, is what you might want to do in your emails, where you have the text at the bottom that you do for unsubscribe. You may want to add a little blurb there that says, unsubscribes may take 24 to 48 hours, but thank you for unsubscribing. Sorry to see you go. Whatever you put in there, but put in the 24 to 48 hours disclaimer. So then they're not surprised if they get an email 5 hours after they unsubscribed. It really is a question of whether or not that's something you feel comfortable doing. What I've found is that it's very rare that somebody unsubscribes within that 12-hour period. But I need to bring it to your attention because it certainly can happen. And it's just a cost benefit at that point of, well, what's our risk here? How many of these can really happen? In most cases, what we've seen is that customers are willing to take that risk because we're looking at 1 or 2 leads, maybe at tops, out of 100,000, a million, 5 million, however many you're sending. And generally that risk is pretty low. But I would never tell someone this is the way you should do it. I can give you the kind of the choices, and those are your 2 choices really that we recommend. So we've got Head Start, and we have one more piece that I think is really worth going into here, and that's the dashboards. This is a huge benefit that email programs have over campaigns. Dashboards, and I'm going to just show you what they look like here. They give you this incredibly clear result in a visual representation. So if we look at the one on the right, for example, on the right we see a dashboard that tells us our A/B test results. So up in the upper left, you'll see the 24,000 number. That's showing you that a third, and a third went out to your subject line test, for example. So in this case, it was a 3-way test. The clicks, so in this case, the clicks over here, it shows what the click rates were for each one and the click to open. And then it shows a summary of clicks and unsubscribes. This is the information that behind the scenes it's using to make the decision of who won. But here in this dashboard, it's showing you with all the nice colors to separate everything. It's showing you what happened with that test. Now, the other piece of that dashboard is what happened with the email in general, and that's on the left. On the left-hand side, you'll see that it gives you delivereds. It gives you opens by hour. So how many opened in the first half hour, in the first hour, all the way off to 72 hours and after, which is really nice because it really shows you when people are opening it. So if I sent the email at 10 a.m. and I'm finding that more people opened it 4 hours later than opened it right away, well, maybe I should start sending my emails a little later to get better penetration. And then it gives you some summary information on opens, clicks. It gives you the engagement score, which is a proprietary Marketo number that basically gives you an idea of how well the engagement is with your email based on opens, clicks, click to open, those kind of things. So you see in front of you some really great visual representations of the data from your send and from your test. This is something you cannot get in an email campaign. You will not get this level of information, especially when we're talking about an A/B test, and you will not get things like the hours that they opened, things like that. Yes, you can run an email performance report and get clicks and opens and open percentage and various things like that, but you're not going to get time. You're not going to get an overall view. You're not going to get anything on an A/B test that's worthy. You are able to get some A/B information in terms of each email, but it's really not something that is as useful when you look at it in an email performance report. So that is, probably, if I rank all the benefits, right? We're looking at things like ease of use, we're looking at A/B testing, and we're looking at the dashboards, right? And I think those are the three things that really are the benefits to email programs. Me personally, and as a group here at Shomi Leads, what we find with what our customers see is the biggest benefit is for the A/B test. If you want to do an A/B test and you don't need to do anything else other than send the emails, this is the way to go, in our opinion. The dashboards, I think, are great, and the ease of use is great, but the A/B test is really the catch here, and really makes for a great addition to your arsenal as a marketer. So I think you can tell that I'm pretty excited about email programs. I remember when they first added email programs at Marketo, and at first I was not so sure of what was going to be happening with it, and it didn't have all these features that it has now, and it's really grown into something that's quite useful. The last piece that really made it work was that head start. That was the piece that people really needed. So that is the end of my presentation when it comes to email programs. I hope this has been helpful for you. I do want to talk really quickly about the upcoming sessions, and I know we talked about this a little bit on the beginning of this presentation, but coming up, we have data management next week at the same time. We're going to wait for the holiday and we'll get into forums, emails, and engagement programs. They will all be at the same time, a week apart, starting on the 4th of January for those last three. So again, I hope you found this interesting, and Courtney, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. You shared some really great information and insights into optimizing Marketo for email programs. We'll go ahead and open it up to questions and answers at this time. If you haven't submitted your questions, go ahead and do so now in the questions box. We already do have a lot of great questions come through. So the first question is from David. Will I still be able to use email performance reporting if I use email programs?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So I mentioned the email performance report a little bit there at the end. The email performance report is based off of an email, and it does not care how that email was sent. So the short answer is yes, you can still use an email performance report. It's completely separate from the campaign or the program or whatever you've used to send an email. It simply triggers off of emails itself. So yeah, you can absolutely use the email performance report as sort of an addendum to what you get out of the dashboards. It gives you more numeric representation, so you certainly can do that.
Great, thank you. Next question we have is from Amy. When doing A/B testing, what is a meaningful sample size to test with?
Oh, well, meaningful sample size to test with. It really can vary. I would say that what I've seen is somewhere between 10 to 25% is usually what we see. At least 10, I think, is something you want to have. Now, part of that depends on how big your population is too. Right? If you're sending to 5 million leads, you can get away with a lower percentage. If you're sending to 50,000 leads, you might want to, turn that up a little bit to a higher percentage. So, I always hate to say it depends, but it does. But 10 to 25 seems to be the right range that we see most of the time.
Yeah. So the next question is from Tim. Is there any limitation to the size of a send?
Not that anyone is aware of is the answer I'll give. There's no published limit. Personally, I've seen in the tens of millions go out through an email program. And that was before Head Start. So it would take quite a while for it to go out, but I've seen it happen. Really, in most cases, that's not going to be, I would imagine that most of the people on this webinar probably aren't worried about tens of millions of emails. But certainly if you're in that size range, it can be done. I've seen it done. It just can be a little slow. Sometimes if it's really huge, it can even be too slow for Head Start to process in 12 hours. And so, you have to weigh that a little bit and understand that it may take a little bit for your email to go out when you're sending out to a huge group of people. Another thing you could do is split it up between two different email programs if that's a concern. But again, that's a pretty rare situation. That example I gave was, really an outlier of what we normally see. Most people are sending email programs to no more than maybe 10 million, and Head Start will take care of that. And there's basically, that I've seen, no problem in sending that.
That's awesome. Thank you. And the next question is from Sandy. Do email programs have an abort feature?
Yes, thankfully. So when you're on the schedule tab, or the schedule tile, I should say, and you have approved it, there's two things that can happen, right? One is I haven't sent it yet, and I've changed my mind, or we need to delay it, or anything like that. Well, there's an unapproved button where the approved button used to be. You hit unapprove and nothing to worry about. Now, abort is a different situation, right? Abort implies that you've started the campaign already. Once you start the campaign, that same button on the schedule tile turns into abort program. At that point, it's very similar to when you abort a campaign as well. It stops it in its tracks. What it can't do is stop emails that were already sent. There's just no physical way to do that. If you had a 5 million population and 10,000 of them already got sent by the time you hit the abort button, those 10,000 are out the door, and there's nothing you can really do about that. As I like to say, you can't put the rabbit back in the hat. That is something that you just are not able to do. But abort is a huge feature that I've seen marketers use many times when they realize at the last second that they made a mistake, and they catch it early enough to at least stop some of the population from getting it.
That's great. Thank you. So Andrea asks, can I use an email program as an asset in an engagement program?
No, you cannot. With engagement programs, you can put in a normal default program, and you can do what it normally does, which is put in emails themselves. But because an email program is set up to actually send an email as a blast to a group of people, it really doesn't work within an email program, within a nurture program or an engagement program. It just, logically at that point doesn't make sense anymore, because if you're going to blast that email out, what happens on the next one, right? And nurture programs are already in some ways blasting emails out to a person in the nurture in the first place. So it just isn't something that fits. It doesn't work. Marketo definitely does not allow that.
Thanks, Eric. So it does look like we're running close to the end of our webinar, so we'll go ahead and wrap it up at this time. We want to thank everyone for joining us again today. And if you have any questions or would like to request a health check from Shomi Leads, please go ahead and feel free to contact us at info@shomileads.com. Thanks again, and we look forward to sharing more with you next time.